I'm standing in my pajamas at 5 a.m., surrounded by 12 SWAT officers with assault rifles pointed at my chest, and all I can think about is the text I got 6 hours earlier. Congratulations, your final interview at the White House is tomorrow at 9 a.m. The lead agent's face goes pale when he sees what pops up on his classified database. "Ma'am," he says, lowering his weapon, "we need to make some calls. Now." But let me back up for just a second because you need to understand who was standing in that room to appreciate how insane this moment really was. I'm Delaney Morrison Chen, 28 years old, and until that morning, I thought I was pretty good at predicting threats. That's literally what they were hiring me to do at the White House. Cybersecurity specialist, level Q clearance. The kind of person who spends 12 hours a day studying how bad guys think so I can stop them before they strike. Funny how I never saw my own sister coming. The SWAT team had destroyed my front door, just obliterated it. Wood splinters covered my living room floor like confetti at the world's worst party. My roommate, Indigo, was pressed against the hallway wall, her hands shaking above her head, her glasses crooked on her terrified face. She kept looking at me like I might have an explanation. But how do you explain something this catastrophic when you're still trying to process it yourself? Agent Johnson stood at the front of the formation, and even in my state of shock, I noticed things about him. 20 years of field experience written in the lines around his eyes, a wedding ring that caught the tactical lights, a slight favor to his left leg like he'd taken a bullet there once and never quite recovered. This was a man who'd kicked down doors in places way more dangerous than Arlington, Virginia, and yet something about this morning had him on edge. Delaney Morrison? His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Yes, sir." My voice came out steadier than I felt. Maybe it was the training, or maybe it was just the absurdity of it all. "We received a credible terrorism threat that names you as the perpetrator of a planned attack on the White House scheduled for today." The words hit me like physical blows. Terrorism, attack, White House, today. My brain tried to process them, to make them make sense, but they kept bouncing off each other like pinballs in my skull. "Agent Johnson," I said, forcing my voice to stay level. "My sister Waverly called this in, didn't she?" The slightest flicker crossed his face. Confirmation. My sister, the same one who used to lock me in the basement when our parents went out, who told my high school boyfriend I was cheating on him because she wanted him for herself, who showed up drunk to my MIT graduation and told everyone I'd slept my way to valedictorian. That sister had finally found the ultimate way to destroy me. "Sir, I have a job interview at the White House in exactly 4 hours and 13 minutes. Final round. Information Security Division. My interviewer is Director Castellano. Badge number 7-4-2-9-Alpha. One of the other agents shifted his weight. His rifle moved slightly. "Anyone can memorize numbers, ma'am." "Then let me give you one more," I said, looking directly at Johnson. "When you run my name through your classified database, don't use Morrison." Use Morrison Chen. My late husband was Lieutenant Colonel David Chen, killed in Afghanistan 3 years ago during Operation Steel Curtain. That's when the NSA recruited me. That's why I have clearance levels your system is about to flag as beyond your authorization to even view. Johnson's encrypted phone was already in his hand, but he hesitated. In that moment, I saw him calculating. If I was telling the truth, he was about to become the agent who almost shot a White House security consultant based on a false tip. If I was lying, well, terrorists had gotten creative before. "Make the call," I said quietly. "Or in about 30 seconds, your phone is going to ring anyway when Director Castellano realizes his new cyber chief isn't at her interview because she's face down on her apartment floor with federal agents on her back." That's when Johnson typed my name into his system. The change in his expression was instant and devastating. His face went from skeptical to shocked to something approaching panic in less than 3 seconds. He lowered his weapon so fast the other agents looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Stand down," he barked. "Stand down now. We have a major problem." 48 hours ago, I was on top of the world. After 3 years of grinding through government clearance processes, background checks, and 7 rounds of interviews, I'd finally made it. The White House Information Security Division wanted me. Not bad for a girl who grew up in a double-wide trailer in Arkansas with a sister who told everyone I'd never amount to anything. Let me paint you a picture of my life before everything exploded. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Arlington, Virginia, with my roommate, Indigo, who taught yoga and made the best Thai green curry you've ever tasted. My days consisted of 12-hour stretches, analyzing cyber threats for a defense contractor, my evenings spent studying for additional certifications, and my weekends volunteering at the VA, teaching disabled veterans basic coding skills. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and I'd built it from scratch after my world fell apart 3 years ago. See, I wasn't always Delaney Morrison Chen. I was just Delaney Morrison until I met David at a cybersecurity conference in Denver. He was Army intelligence, sharp as a razor with a smile that could light up a server room. We got married 8 months later in a tiny ceremony with just his squad and my mom. Waverly didn't come. She said she had a stomach bug, but her Instagram showed her at a wine tasting in Little Rock that same day. David deployed to Afghanistan 2 weeks after our first anniversary. He was supposed to be doing intelligence work, safe behind the wire at Bagram, but there was an ambush during what should have been a routine meeting with local officials. The official report used words like heroic and selfless, but all I knew was that my husband came home in a flag-draped coffin, and I became a widow at 25. That's when the NSA approached me. Turns out, David had been doing more than just Army intelligence. He'd been working on something called Project Firewall, a new cyber defense initiative for protecting classified government communications. They needed someone to continue his work, someone with the clearance and the skills. They needed me. Waverly, my older sister, had taken a different path entirely. While I was getting my master's from MIT, she was on her 3rd kid with her high school sweetheart, Preston. They lived in the same town we grew up in, Millbrook, Arkansas, population 3,847 on a good day. She worked part-time at the local real estate office, mostly showing double-wides and starter homes to young families who didn't know any better than to stay in Millbrook. Our relationship had been poisonous since Dad died when I was 16. Harold Morrison was a mechanic who believed in 2 things: hard work and education. He'd saved every penny from fixing trucks and tractors to put money aside for college funds. When his heart gave out in the garage while working on a transmission, he left very specific instructions in his will. The house went to Waverly because she needs roots. The life insurance, all $500,000 of it, went to me because Delaney's going to need wings. Waverly never forgave him for seeing something in me he didn't see in her. She definitely never forgave me for using that money to get out of Arkansas. The night before the raid, I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop, practicing my presentation one more time. The final interview was supposed to be a formality. Director Castellano had basically told me as much in our last call, but I didn't want to leave anything to chance. This job meant everything to me. It was my chance to serve my country the way David had, to protect people with code instead of bullets. Indigo was sitting across from me, helping me rehearse answers to potential questions. "What makes you uniquely qualified for this position?" she asked, reading from my prep notes. "My work on Project Firewall demonstrates my ability to identify vulnerabilities in our current system." I practiced. "In the past 6 months, I've identified 17 critical weaknesses that could have been exploited by foreign actors." "Good, but make it more personal. They already know you're qualified." That's when my phone exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls from Mom, 3 from my cousin Bridget, even one from Preston, which never happened unless someone was dead or arrested. I called Mom back immediately. Nadine Morrison was not a woman who panicked easily. She'd raised 2 daughters alone after Dad died, worked doubles at the hospital, and never once complained. But her voice that night was different. "Delaney, honey, Waverly's done something terrible. She saw Bridget's Facebook post about your White House job. She's telling everyone you're not who you say you are. She's saying you're dangerous." At 4:47 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my apartment door exploding off its hinges. The noise was so violent, so wrong, that for a split second, my brain tried to convince me it was thunder. Then came the voices, deep and commanding, filling every corner of my home like floodwater. "FBI, hands where we can see them! Do not move!" Red laser dots danced across my bedroom wall like deadly fireflies, each one representing a finger on a trigger, a decision away from ending my life. I heard Indigo scream from the next room, raw and terrified, followed by the crash of furniture being overturned. My body moved on autopilot, hands rising slowly above my head while my mind raced to understand what was happening. 12 officers poured into my room, each one in full tactical gear, weapons raised and ready. The lead agent, Johnson, moved with the controlled precision of someone who'd done this hundreds of times before. His eyes swept the room, cataloging exits, checking corners, assessing threats. When they landed on me, standing there in my old MIT sweatshirt and pajama shorts, I saw a flicker of something. Doubt, maybe. Or recognition that I didn't match whatever profile he'd been given. Delaney Morrison? His voice was professional but tight, like he was holding something back. Yes, sir. My voice came out surprisingly steady, though my heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. We received a credible terrorism threat indicating you're planning an attack on the White House today. We have witness testimony and evidence of you accessing jihadist websites, downloading bomb-making manuals, and studying classified White House blueprints. The words hit me in waves, each one more absurd than the last. My knees wanted to buckle, but I forced myself to stay standing, to think. Waverly. This had her fingerprints all over it, but how had she made it sound credible enough to mobilize a SWAT team? Agent Johnson, my sister Waverly called this in, didn't she? I kept my voice level, professional, matching his tone. His expression flickered for just a moment. We can't disclose the source of our intelligence, ma'am. I need you to slowly lower yourself to your knees, hands remaining visible. Sir, before I do that, I need you to know something. I have a job interview at the White House in 4 hours. Final round with Director Castellano, Information Security Division. I'm a cleared defense contractor with Level Q clearance. Whatever my sister told you, she's taken my work completely out of context. Your sister? One of the other agents spoke up. The witness is your sister? Johnson shot him a look that could have frozen fire. Martinez, secure the roommate. Williams, start processing the scene. As agents scattered through my apartment, I heard them rifling through everything I owned. My laptop, my files, my entire life being dissected by strangers with guns. From the living room, Indigo was asking questions that no one was answering. What's happening? What did she do? Delaney wouldn't hurt anyone. Agent Johnson. I tried again. I research cybersecurity threats for a living. Yes, I visit extremist websites. Yes, I download their materials. Yes, I study government buildings' security protocols. It's literally my job. I'm paid by the Department of Defense to think like the bad guys so I can stop them. Johnson's weapon remained trained on me, but I could see him processing this information. If that's true, you'll have documentation, verification. Check your phone. Call the Secret Service. Call Director Castellano directly. His number ends in 4729. How could you possibly know that? Because I've been working with his team remotely for 6 months. Project Firewall, it's a classified initiative to protect government communications from foreign interference. My husband died developing it. I'm finishing his work. The mention of David changed something in the room's energy. Johnson pulled out his encrypted phone, but before he could dial, it rang. He answered, listened, and his face underwent a transformation I'll never forget. The color drained away like someone had opened a valve. Yes, Director. No, sir. We're at the location now. There seems to be a misunderstanding. He paused, and I could hear shouting from the other end of the line. Her sister, sir. The witness is her sister. The next words I heard from his phone were loud enough for everyone to catch. You're telling me you have a SWAT team pointing weapons at my new cyber chief because of a family dispute. Johnson looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw him finally understand the magnitude of what had just happened. The FBI had been weaponized in a sibling rivalry, and he was the one holding the weapon. Agent Johnson's encrypted phone was still pressed to his ear, Director Castellano's voice carrying enough force that agents near him stepped back. I watched Johnson's face cycle through expressions I'd only seen in people realizing they'd made catastrophic mistakes. But I didn't have time to enjoy his discomfort. I had a choice to make that would define everything that came next. Agent Johnson, I said, interrupting his stream of apologies to my future boss, I need you to listen very carefully. In exactly 3 hours and 7 minutes, I'm supposed to be in the West Wing, not just for an interview, but for a live demonstration of a security protocol I've been developing. There are going to be Joint Chiefs in that room. The National Security Advisor will be there. If I don't show up, it's not just my career that's over. It's a 6-month operation that your sister agency has been running." He lowered the phone slightly. "What operation?" "Check your database. Not just my name, Delaney Morrison Chen. Check Operation Blindspot. Check what happens today at 9 a.m. Johnson typed rapidly into his phone, his face growing paler with each screen he read. The other agents were starting to lower their weapons without being told, sensing the shift in their leader's body language. "Stand down," Johnson's voice cracked like a whip. "Everyone, weapons down now." The red dots disappeared from my walls. The rifles pointed at the floor. Indigo's sobbing from the living room became audible, now that my blood wasn't pounding in my ears. "Ms. Morrison Chen," Johnson's voice had completely changed. "Operation Blindspot is a classified counterintelligence program. You're running the demonstration?" "I built it," I said simply. 6 months of work, identifying how foreign actors could use family members to compromise government employees. Funny how my own sister just proved my thesis. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. I could have been angry, I could have demanded arrests, apologies, reparations. Instead, I did something that threw Johnson completely off balance. "Agent Johnson, I want you on my team." "Excuse me?" "You mobilized a full SWAT team based on what you believed was credible intelligence. You were wrong, but your response time was impressive. 17 minutes from call to breach. That's extraordinary. But here's what's more interesting. You were willing to listen when presented with contradicting evidence. Most agents would have hauled me in first and asked questions later." Johnson stared at me like I'd started speaking Mandarin. "Ma'am, we just destroyed your apartment and held you at gunpoint. And in 3 hours, I'm going to walk into the White House and explain to some very important people how easy it was for my sister to weaponize the FBI's terrorism response system. You know what would make that presentation even better? Having the lead agent standing next to me, explaining exactly how she did it and how we're going to fix it." The room went silent except for the crackle of radios and Indigo's quiet sniffling. Johnson looked at his team, then back at me. "You want me to come to your job interview?" "I want you to help me revolutionize how we assess family-based threats to national security. My sister didn't just file a false report, Agent Johnson. She did something much more sophisticated. She knew exactly what keywords to use, what evidence to fabricate, what buttons to push to get you here. Someone coached her, or she studied the system. Either way, we have a problem." Johnson pulled up something on his phone, reading intently. "The report includes screenshots of conversations, photos placing you at suspicious locations, a detailed timeline of radicalization. This isn't amateur work." "Exactly. So we have 2 options. Option 1, you arrest me, process me, realize you're wrong, release me, and I miss the most important meeting of my career while my sister gets charged with filing a false report. Option 2, you drive me to that meeting yourself. We present this as a case study in system manipulation, and we turn this disaster into the most compelling demonstration of why my security protocols are necessary." "You're serious?" "Agent Johnson, my husband died protecting this country. My sister just tried to destroy my life out of jealousy. I can either fall apart or I can turn this into something useful. I'm choosing useful. The question is, are you coming with me?" Johnson looked at his phone, where Director Castellano was presumably still waiting. Then he looked at his team, weapons lowered, looking confused and slightly ashamed. Finally, he looked at me, standing in my pajamas in my destroyed bedroom, somehow conducting a job negotiation with the man who'd just led a raid on my home. "Martinez," he barked, "secure the scene and process everything. Document every piece of evidence the sister submitted. Williams, you're with me. We're escorting Ms. Morrison Chen to the White House." He turned back to me. "You have 15 minutes to get dressed. Business formal. We're going to make history today, but probably not the kind anyone expected." The ride to the White House happened in Agent Johnson's black SUV with lights and sirens clearing traffic like Moses parting the Red Sea. I sat in the back seat, having thrown on my best Navy suit in record time, while agents waited in my destroyed living room. Johnson drove while Agent Williams typed furiously on a tablet, pulling up every piece of evidence Waverly had submitted. The more we saw, the more terrifying it became. Your sister didn't just make accusations, Williams said, showing me his screen. She created an entire digital footprint, fake IP addresses showing you accessing Al-Qaeda forums, doctored photos from 3 years ago placing you at a mosque under surveillance. She even fabricated email headers to make it look like you were corresponding with known extremists. How long would this have taken her? Johnson asked, weaving through morning traffic on Constitution Avenue. Months, I said, staring at the fabricated evidence. She's been planning this for months. Look at the metadata timestamps. She started creating these files the day after Mom told her about my White House interview process starting. We pulled up to the West Wing entrance at 8:43 a.m. Security was already waiting for us, having been briefed by someone very high up the chain. They waved us through checkpoints that usually took hours to clear. By 8:51 a.m., I was standing outside Director Castellano's office, Agent Johnson beside me, both of us looking like we'd been through a war zone because we had. Castellano opened the door himself, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd seen enough to never be surprised. Yet when he saw me standing there with FBI agents, his composure cracked slightly. Delaney, I've been informed of this morning's events. I cannot begin to apologize enough. Don't apologize, sir. Weaponize it. Excuse me? The demonstration I was supposed to give today was about family-based security vulnerabilities. My sister just gave us the perfect case study. Is everyone still assembled? Castellano's eyes sharpened with interest. The Joint Chiefs are in Conference Room A. The NSA director flew in specifically for this. Then let's not keep them waiting. Walking into that conference room was like entering a fortress of power. 4-star generals, intelligence directors, people whose names never made newspapers, but whose decisions shaped the world. They all turned when we entered, clearly expecting just me and Castellano, not me, flanked by FBI agents carrying evidence bags. Gentlemen, ladies, Castellano began, Ms. Morrison Chen's presentation this morning comes with an unexpected live demonstration. I stepped forward, pulling up my prepared slides on the main screen. Good morning. 4 hours ago, the FBI SWAT team raided my apartment based on intelligence that I was planning a terrorist attack on this building. The intelligence was compelling enough to mobilize 12 federal agents in full tactical gear. The room tensed. The NSA director leaned forward. The intelligence was entirely fabricated by my sister, Waverly Morrison Preston, using techniques I've been warning about for 6 months. Agent Johnson, would you please share what you discovered? Johnson stepped forward, his voice steady and professional. The suspect's sister created approximately 300 pieces of false evidence over a 4-month period. She used publicly available information about counterterrorism investigations to craft a narrative that hit every trigger point in our assessment protocols. She knew exactly how to make Ms. Morrison Chen appear to be a legitimate threat. I clicked to my next slide, showing the fabricated evidence. Every piece of false data my sister created exploited a specific vulnerability in how we assess threats. She knew that family members are considered credible witnesses. She knew that technical evidence is rarely verified in real time during immediate threat responses. She knew that my legitimate work in cybersecurity would provide enough genuine data points to make her lies seem plausible. The Army Chief of Staff interrupted. You're telling us a civilian with no training penetrated our threat assessment system? No, General. I'm telling you my sister had help. The sophistication of these forgeries, the specific knowledge of our protocols, this required inside information. The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once until Castellano raised his hand for silence. Show them the rest, Delaney. I pulled up my final set of slides. 3 weeks ago, my sister started dating someone new after separating from her husband. His name is Viktor Kozlov. He claimed to be a software developer from Austin. He's actually a Russian intelligence officer who's been on the FBI watch list for 2 years. Johnson's head snapped toward me. That wasn't in our files. Because I just figured it out in your SUV. The techniques used to fabricate this evidence match exactly with a GRU playbook we intercepted last year. My sister wasn't trying to destroy my career out of jealousy. She was an unwitting asset in a Russian operation to prevent me from implementing new security protocols that would specifically target their infiltration methods. The silence in the room was deafening. Then the NSA director spoke. Are you telling us the Russians used your sister to attack you? I'm telling you they tried, and they failed, because Agent Johnson did exactly what he was supposed to do, and because our system, while vulnerable, still had enough safeguards for the truth to come out. The room stayed silent for exactly 3 seconds before the NSA director stood up. Agent Johnson, I want that Russian operative in custody within the hour. General Matthews, lock down all classified systems until we can verify no breaches occurred. Castellano, Ms. Morrison-Chen doesn't need an interview. She needs a badge, an office, and whatever resources she requires. Make it happen. That's how I got hired at the White House, standing in a conference room that smelled like coffee and tension, still wearing the suit I'd thrown on while FBI agents waited in my destroyed apartment. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, that's where it really begins. Viktor Kozlov was arrested at Dallas International Airport trying to board a flight to Mexico City. He had 4 passports, 3 encrypted phones, and a digital storage device containing profiles on 17 other government employees with family members who could be exploited. My sister wasn't special, she was just convenient, a jealous sibling with access to someone the Russians desperately wanted to stop. When the FBI brought Waverly in for questioning, she completely fell apart. The agents showed her Victor's real identity, his connections to Russian intelligence, the other women he'd been targeting. She sobbed for 3 hours straight in that interrogation room, realizing she'd been played by a professional who knew exactly how to weaponize her resentment. He said Delaney was dangerous, she told the agents, and I watched the recording later. He said he had friends in security who were worried about her. He taught me how to gather evidence, told me what to look for. I thought I was protecting America. I thought I was finally doing something important. The federal prosecutor wanted to charge her with treason. That carries a potential death sentence. But I intervened, and this is the part that surprised everyone, including me. I asked for a deal. Waverly would cooperate fully, testify against Victor, and help us understand exactly how foreign operatives identify and exploit family tensions. In exchange, she'd get 5 years probation and a $50,000 fine instead of 25 to life in federal prison. Mom called me the night after Waverly's plea deal was finalized. Why did you save her, baby? After everything she tried to do to you? Because destroying her wouldn't fix anything, Mom, but understanding how they used her might save the next person. Waverly's husband Preston filed for divorce the day after her arrest. Turns out he'd been suspicious of Victor from the start, but Waverly threatened to leave him and take the kids if he didn't support her story to the FBI. The court gave him full custody of Easton, Grayson, and Little Meadow. Waverly gets supervised visits once a month. The real victory came 6 months later. Using what we learned from Victor's operation and Waverly's manipulation, I developed a new threat assessment protocol that's now used by every federal agency. It's called the Morrison-Chen Framework, and it specifically identifies when family members are being exploited by foreign operatives. In the first year alone, it stopped 11 similar operations. Agent Johnson became my closest collaborator at the White House. We teach a joint seminar now at Quantico about recognizing family-based security threats. He always starts with the same line. Let me tell you about the time I almost arrested the person who would revolutionize national security, all because her sister fell in love with a Russian spy. Waverly wrote me a letter last month. It was short, written in pencil on lined paper like we were kids again passing notes in school. Delaney, I spent my whole life hating you for being extraordinary. I never realized that made me the perfect weapon against you. I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for all the years I wasted being angry that you were exactly who Dad knew you'd become. I keep that letter in my desk drawer at the White House, right next to David's folded flag and my parents' wedding photo. It reminds me that the most dangerous threats aren't always the ones carrying guns or planting bombs. Sometimes they're the people who know us best, whose anger and jealousy make them vulnerable to anyone smart enough to exploit it. My name is Delaney Morrison-Chen. I protect America's secrets from foreign threats. The Russians tried to use my own sister to stop me, and instead they gave me the tools to stop them. Every morning when I badge into the White House, when I walk past security I help design, I remember that morning in my apartment with 12 rifles pointed at my chest. I remember Agent Johnson's face when he realized the truth. I remember my sister's tears when she discovered she'd been used, but mostly I remember that, in the end, we turned a family tragedy into a national victory. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. If you found this story compelling, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below about your own experiences with family betrayal or foreign interference. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable but true stories every week. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay safe out there.